just quite interestingly, just from a feeling perspective, on one hand, I was actually feeling sad that I had to fire a whole bunch of really good, smart people. On the other hand, I was actually feeling quite joyous and content, the fact that I just saved a company a couple of $1 million a year and effectively saved the company. So in business and life, sometimes we need to make some really, really tough decisions, and sometimes, you know, there's kind of like paralysis. And I knew for like weeks I didn't want to make a decision because I was kind of scared internally of making a particular decision. But in fact, that turned out to be one of the best decisions I made. And then what we did, we refocused our attention into web hosting. Back then, we were running the 37th largest hosting company in Australia. And as one of my mentors says, and I will come back to mentors, he says, if you're going to do anything, make sure that you have a big, fat, hairy, audacious goal. A big, fat, hairy, audacious goal. And so what we did, we set ourselves one of these goals to become one of the top 3 virtual web hosts in the country. And then through a series of acquisitions, and it ended up being 17 acquisitions and quite strong organic growth, we ended up building the 2nd largest virtual web host after only 18 months. And that was through a hell of a lot of work by the people in the organisation. So we basically went from there, we built our web hosting business, and then about 5 years later, because I actually believe it takes a good 5 years to build a solid, profitable business, we ended up selling that company into a float, a number of other assets, and generated about $26 million of revenue or sales and a $17 million profit. And the reason that we did that was that we wanted to get back into digital media. So just from a web hosting perspective, 17 acquisitions over a 5-year period. I'll talk about integration strategy as well. And we then ended up selling it. So we sold into 2 IPOs and netted needed that profit of $17.7 million. That went to the company. Unfortunately, not myself, but to the company. And what it did, it gave us the capital to reinvest into digital media. And I'll talk about digital media in a moment. Now, the whole notion of mentors, ever since I can remember, I've always tried to surround myself with smart people. People with a lot of grey hair. I mean, they don't necessarily need to have grey hair, but basically grey hair. And the number one way that I've actually found mentors, and once again, this comes back down to sort of a bit of soul searching. It's actually asking for help. It's asking for help. And I doubt anyone in this room would say no to anyone that asked them for help. And so what I did, I was speaking to people that I know, because we all know people, we all have networks that we can tap into, and I said, I need some help, because I'm not exactly certain of what I kind of know what I want to do, but I don't actually know what steps I need to take in order to get there. And so I asked one particular individual, and he said, actually, I can't really help you because it's not really my space, but I've got someone that I think can help you. And that was basically my first mentor, a gentleman called Adolf Hanning. And when I met, this guy arranged a coffee for us, and we basically sat down and had a coffee. And we started talking, and I had a huge amount of experience, and like instantly, I said, I've got this problem, that problem, and within 30 seconds he said, this is the option, that's the option, like without even having to think about it twice. He already knew instinctively because he'd been there and done it before. And at the end I said, Adolf, I really love the information and feedback that you're giving me. I mean, this is saving me years of falling over and picking myself up. But I said, I'm a small business. I can hardly afford to pay myself, let alone pay anyone else. And he said, you know what? I love Chinese food. So from that point onwards, every month, I'd take him to Yumcha. I'd basically pay for the meal with my pen and paper. I had a list of questions already pre-organised, and I basically asked him, while he's eating his Yumcha, how about this, how about that? And he sort of struggled to eat his food while I was asking him a million and one questions. And that was the way that I got my first mentor, and I didn't have to pay any money because I didn't really have any money back then. And after a few years, once the relationship built, I asked him, Adolf, why? When you're getting paid thousands of dollars a day, working with Deloitte and these other firms, why did you actually help me? Why? I'm not anyone special. And he said, Dom, because when I was younger, I had people that did exactly the same thing. And so most mentors help. It's got nothing to do with the money. They do it because they want to give back. Because people have given to them and they just want to give back to society. So moving on from mentors, we then solved all of our hosting businesses, and then what we did, we got into media. It was always our passion, and I won't spend too much time focusing in relation to it, but once again, we set ourselves, we had an even bigger goal this time. We actually wanted to become the largest independent digital media and entertainment company in Australia. And then through a series of 14 acquisitions and very strong organic growth, we ended up becoming the largest in Australia. And at the last point, post-Destra, I think the December 07 half, we had annualised revenues of just over $100 million, generated a half-year profit of $6.5 million. So the business was going gangbusters, and Lachlan Murdoch and Paul Ramsey decided to join the register because they really liked what we were doing. I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about Opus Prime. I mean, some of you may have heard about Opus Prime and the fact that I'm no longer at Destra. But what I'll do, I'll talk about a bit of M&A first of all, and then get into some of the detail there. So from an acquisition perspective, I won't spend too much time focusing on this because these slides are in there, and I'm happy to take your questions post this event. Whenever we look for an acquisition, we look at a number of things. Cultural fit is definitely one. Will these people fit into the organisation? And I must say that that's actually a fairly new learning for me. Is it EPS, earnings per share profitable, positive? So does it actually make money? What's our funding strategy? What's our integration strategy? And over the last 8 years, I've made 31 acquisitions and 3 divestments. So we built effectively a system internally that allowed us to do that. I break down integration into 3 key steps. Step number 1 is focusing on the customers, and what we find is with good, solid, two-way communication, integrating customers is, I won't say simple, but it's relatively easy. The second is the back office systems, the MIS system.